Good evening. Welcome to a special meeting, the closed session of the Board of Directors of the Kensington Police Protection and Community Services District. I am Board President Rochelle Shara-Swat. It is Monday, August 14th, 2017. I will now take roll. Director Welsh?
Here.
Director Hasai? Here. Vice President Natoli?
Here.
And we currently have a vacancy on the board for the 5th seat, which we will be filling this evening. We will now take public comments for items occurring during closed session. Seeing as there are none, we will adjourn to closed session. Okay. Police Protection and Community Services District. Just a quick announcement. Tonight, we are taking public comment cards prior to ensure fluidity. So if you would like to make a public comment, please, in the next couple of minutes, come forward and prepare. It's just your name and subject. And then we will have an order to our speakers. So we'll begin in just 1-2 minutes here. All right, everyone ready? It's not a regular meeting, especially.
Yeah, just read them.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Good evening. Welcome to the meeting, the special meeting of the Kensington Police Protection Community Services District. I'm Board President Rochelle Shara-Swat. It is Monday, August 14th, 2017, and I will take roll call. Director Hasai.
Present.
Director Welsh.
Here.
Vice President Natoli.
Here.
And we, of course, are here this evening to fill the vacancy for our 5th board director. In reference to closed session, we have nothing to report out other than to notify you that item C was put on our closed session agenda in error. We do intend to agendize this item at our next regular meeting. We will now turn to board and staff comments.
None for me.
Any board comments from our, all right. Then we move on to item 5, the appointment to fill the director vacancy. I'd like to welcome all 4 candidates who have applied for the position of board director. And I'll let you introduce yourselves for a moment, if you would each state your name. You'll need to turn on your...
Chris Deppy. Dave Spath.
Kim Zwick.
No, I see.
Simon Brofman.
Welcome and good evening. So we have an order listed in the agenda. What will happen is that each candidate will give a 2-minute opening statement on their interest, specific experiences relating to the board, and then we will begin a question period where we rotate through the questions listed in the program. Shall we go alphabetically? Shall we begin with Mr. Brofman, and then when we get to the questions, we will cycle through.
Sure, since my name ends in Z, could we do the voting not alphabetically, perhaps by first name? Because I'm seeing a deja vu for when Mr. Walsh got into office. I was the last one got a vote, so there was no votes left.
Oh,
It'd be so great to change history tonight.
all right. We can, in terms of introducing yourselves, I just thought we'd go 1 through 4, and then we'll just move down the line, beginning on the right, when we...
Voting will be in what order?
The voting will be at the prerogative of the president, and it will be amongst the board members, not, we're not for each candidate. I believe that I will roll call each of the board members, and they will state a name for whom they would like to vote for.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Madam President, just to note that I'll be the timekeeper, and to assist the candidates, I'll hold a 15-second marker up when you have 15 seconds left of the 2 minutes.
Okay. So, Mr. Brofman, if you would like to begin.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Simon Brofman, and I'm applying for the open seat on the KPPCSD board. I wish to start by thanking our board for holding this meeting, and a big thank you to all of tonight's attendees for your interest in the future of Kensington. I also want to reiterate my strong support for the current direction of our board's governance and thank them again for greatly improving the tone and tenor of our board meetings. My family and I have lived in Kensington for over 4 years. During that time, I have applied for and was selected to serve as a member of the KPPCSD Finance Committee, the Kensington Community Council, the KPPCSD Technology Committee, and the Ad Hoc Committee for Governance and Operations Bifurcation Subcommittee, which has a record for the longest name of any committee ever. I believe the successful bifurcation of our previous combined police chief and general manager's position represents what our community can accomplish in improving the effective governance of our community. As you may remember, I withdrew my candidacy in the 2016 election in order to help ensure that a new board majority would be elected, one which would increase our community's involvement in board decisions by engaging our community in a constructive and positive manner, and would also work to reduce our legal fees as well as to negotiate better terms for services delivered to our community. I'm applying for the open KPPCSD board position because I wish to continue our current board's openness to our community's ideas and involvement, and to help...
It's 2 minutes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Deppy?
Hello, my name is Chris Deppy, and I want to also thank everyone for showing up. The 3 of us were on the ad hoc committee, and we always appreciated when people showed up at meetings, so I think it's great to see the community involvement, and thank you to the board for giving us this opportunity. I've lived in Kensington since 1996. I've been involved in the ad hoc committee, on the consolidation subcommittee. We spent a year doing that. One of the issues that I've worked on a lot is traffic control. I actually wanted to know how long it's been since I've been doing it, and I found a letter from 2000 where we communicated with the old Chief Garfield about it. And I spent a lot of time trying to improve traffic issues in Kensington. I've spoken to board members, I've spoken to neighbors, spoken to the county, and I think we've made a lot of improvements, both along Franciscan where we live and also in Kensington-wide. So I've tried to be involved in the community in a number of different ways. My main interests are still traffic control. I think it's still an issue that needs a comprehensive solution, and I'd certainly like to work on that. I'd also like to continue the work of the ad hoc committee. I agree with Simon that the bifurcation of the GM and the chief of police was a great advance forward, and I think that's really good. The one area that the ad hoc committee didn't really finish was investigating contracting out, mainly because the agencies, if you read the report, weren't able to give specific detailed answers about what it would look like contract out. So I'm really interested in further exploring that option and then making a decision either way on the facts that we find out.
All right, thank you. Mr. Spath?
Thank you. Hi, my name's Dave Spath, and welcome to everybody. I want to thank the board for considering me for the vacant position. You asked if I speak to my interest and my skills and experience that I bring to the board. My interest is to be part of a board that is dedicated to providing Kensington residents with high-quality services, whether it's police, recreation, or solid waste services. And I believe that this board shares that goal. I have considerable experience in public sector management, which I think is important as a board member. I worked for the State Health Department for more than 3 decades. I was responsible for overseeing activities dealing with public health, in particular ensuring delivery of safe drinking water to all Californians. And I did manage a multi-million-dollar, multifaceted set of programs, while still at the same time dealing with the challenge of meeting budgets with different revenue stream as this board has to deal with, as well as salaries, pensions, and benefits. And I fully understand, like all Californians, that our residents expect excellent services at a reasonable cost. I also believe that I've been able to demonstrate that I can work with people with diverse opinions and positions. And we have 2 of my colleagues here who had different opinions and positions, and we worked very well together, I think, on the ad hoc committee. But I've had that experience both at the national, state, and local level. I'm a 34-year resident of Kensington. I'm deeply committed to developing a sustainable future direction that best meets the values and the ideas of the community. I believe my experience and my ability to work cooperatively and effectively with others toward consensus decision-making make me well-suited to serve on the board. So thank you again for considering me.
Mrs. Vick?
Hi, I'm Kim Zwick. I was standing before you when Director Walsh got on the board. So I'm hoping we do the voting in terms of first names, because my first name is K rather than Z. But anyway, so I also ran in several elections here in Kensington. I have been a member of the community here since 2000. I've raised 4 children. They have all gone to Hilltop. I have one in El Cerrito High right now and one in K2 Summit, which was the old Windrush facility. And I forgot to put that on my candidate statement for consideration here, is that I stood in front of the El Cerrito City Council just this last spring asking that they allow that K2 school to have a high school there in spite of the neighbors not wanting a high school there because of the parking. And when I pointed out that Prospect Sierra had lots of cars on the street, not only did we get a lot of laughs and got a cheers from the audience, but they passed and allowed them to have a high school because most of those kids can't even afford a car and their parents can't either. So it's a wonderful school, and I'm a big believer in diversity, which is why I did not do the white flight, as did neither of any of the parents on the board today here, and moved to Orinda or Moraga. We raised our family here because we wanted that diversity, and we truly love this community of diversity, including elderly and younger people. In terms of the bifurcation, the contracting out, I've seen all the signs in the yards, and I'm very enthusiastic about looking at that issue. I know that Director Cassell, when she was on this board, had raised that issue up, but I also know that having the police know who's homebound in this tiny community and knowing how to get them out of homes is very valuable and kind of priceless. So I'd want to weigh those things and look at those issues. Another thing I've been involved with is I did the one-way change of signs on Highland and Kenyon. I went to the Board of Supervisors in Contra Costa and suggested that they had a liability there, and they quickly put up signs. So I get it done. I'm behind the scenes. I'm quiet, but I get it done.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, now we're going to move to the questions. There are four of them, and we'll begin with Mr. Braffman. And each candidate, if you could keep your response to no more than 2 minutes, please, that would be helpful. So,
Do my best.
okay, well, we'll have a 15-second warning. We'll begin with, and then we'll just move down the row. Question 1, what do you believe are the district's greatest short-term challenges, long-term challenges?
Well, if the short-term issues are not dealt with, they will become long-term issues, placing the burden on the future, often paying the highest tax rate, which will be the people who have moved into our community recently. The costs and financing for the police department and the community center and police and fire department building are critical issues that must be addressed. Maintaining the positive tone created by our current board is something that I think will make both short-term and long-term issues easier to deal with. The key long-term issues for me are investigating the potential outsourcing of our police department, as well as our long-term relationship with the Kensington Fire Department. Thank you very much.
Just checking the order. So short-term, I would like to see us adopt some bylaws. I sat on the board of Orinda Horsemen's. We get in-kind payments from East Bay Municipal Utility District, and we have bylaws, and we've had those bylaws for 30 years. I think that's kind of basic. And I'd want us to have better legal protection than we do right now as a community. So that's where I would start. I think long-term, yes, you have to look at police pension. We clearly have had our trials as a community as to whether we can properly manage the police. I think we've turned a corner. So where that goes is unknown, but I do think we're on the right path. I work in information technology, and I've done that for 30 years, so I would definitely want to see in the long term for us to adopt more ways to engage so that people that have children and are commuting to San Francisco and away 11 hours a day, as I have been for the last 4 years, can be a part of this community. Thank you.
With regard to short-term goals, I think it's mostly infrastructure issues that have financial implications. The community center upgrade is important. It has to be completed within budget, and Director Hassai and Director Sheriff Wall and President Sheriff Wall have done an excellent job bringing us to this point now. Now we just have to complete it by the end of 2018. We have the public safety building, which is both an infrastructure issue and a long-term financial issue for the district. I think it's important that we partner with the fire board in figuring out a way to reasonably finance that project, and it's still unclear whether it's going to be a retrofit or a brand-new building. But we need to figure out how to pay for it in partnership with the fire board, and it also gives us an opportunity to improve our relationship with the fire board in looking at how we address the community's infrastructure needs going forward. The police MOU is also an issue in the immediate term because it expires in end of 2017. And so that has both short-term and long-term implications. And finally, another short-term issue is the governance structure. We have a part-time general manager, and that's going to take a lot of work because there are a lot of demands, certainly I suspect, on his time. And we have to set appropriate policy goals and objectives so that we can work efficiently with him within the time limitations. The long-term issue is financial stability. And that is going to have to be dealt with long-term planning. I know the Finance Committee with Rob Furman in particular has developed a model for looking at planning over the long term. We also really need to look at strategic planning in the long term as well.
Yeah, most of the issues, it sounds like they've all been raised, but I think the short term, obviously, the renovation of the public safety building is a challenge, although I think that the board is doing a good job handling that, and I think it's probably in good hands. As I mentioned, I think traffic is a short-term and a long-term problem, and I'd like to see a comprehensive solution to traffic problems. Typically, it's been solve this or solve that, but I've never seen a sort of a master plan about how we're going to solve it in a holistic way and in a long-term way. So I'd really like to see a partnership between the police department and the board to come up with, again, a long-term plan that everybody's happy with and really is going to solve it for good and not just for a couple of months. As I mentioned, also, I think finishing the ad hoc committee's work is important. Really understanding what contracting out would mean, getting some hard data, maybe getting an RFP so we really know what the what it looks like. Right now, we don't know what it looks like. It's just sort of a vague contracting out, yes or no, but I don't think you can say I'm for it or against it until you've seen really the details, and I really think we need to get there. And it also means we've got to decide, we have to make a decision on what the structure is. It's been discussed for a long time, and I think it's something that's hanging over everybody's head, and we talk about it, and people are discussing it, and I think getting to that decision either way is really important. And I don't think that's a long-term, I think that's a fairly short-term item. Long-term, obviously, financial, as everyone's mentioned. And I also think long-term it would be nice if we could somehow find a way to lower the discord in the community. I think it's tough for the board to operate when there's so much acrimony going on. I think if we could assume everyone's best intentions and try to understand where people are coming from and really understand that if you're coming to a meeting or someone's on the board or we're applying, we do it because we want to make the community better. And I think if we assumed everyone had those intentions, I think everything would be a lot better.
Okay, thank you all. Moving on to question 2. We'll start with Kim, with you. Describe an experience where you worked as part of a group on a complex problem, and how did your participation improve the results?
I would say when we worked on the community center, when we were looking at the annex over here and the mold and water intrusion issues, and Chuck nicely reached out and asked me to attend a meeting like the night before, and looking at that master plan and looking at what it would take to build it and the cost. I not only ran over to Lynn Walter's house one day with a Wall Street Journal article about vertical gardens and how you could have plants on the side of buildings. I reached out to other members about how we could get the university to pay for it, and it would be actually free for us because you could do a sustainable building that would take the watershed from the roof and show children how to do gray water reclamation. And I also reached out to the university and spoke to an environmental designer engineer and got them back in touch with the KPPCSD to further follow up on that. I believe I actually sent that off to Ms. Watt. And so that's an example of I'm able to reach out from my experience of taking my daughter to Duke University and see that they had a sustainable dormitory with people living it with the grass and the water coming off the roof, and that was done for free by students at the university, and I'm able to reach and think outside the box. That is my trade. I work in information technologies on autonomous vehicles here in Berkeley. Just got Mr. Joya into our office to talk about air quality and how autonomous cars might improve air quality in our state. So I think outside of the box in everything I do, and I am very resourceful, and I reach out and I engage my community, whether it's running down the street to my neighbor who probably looked at me in a perplexed way when I'm waving this article in front of her face, but I'm very passionate and excited about what I do, and I engage people.
My experience has to do with working with a small community in Northern California, Plumas County, called Portola. It's a community of about 2,000 people. Back in the 90s, the state, in a heavy-handed way, decided to poison the drinking water supply of the city of Portola to kill some predatory fish that were non-native. And the result of that was that we bred all sorts of animosity and distrust with the community. I worked for the state health department at that time, and I was asked to engage with the community and try to find a way to resolve some of the issues, to dampen that animosity and try to find some solutions. So I recommended a development of a working group, which included the local officials, local citizens, state agencies, and federal agencies. We met over 2 years to build trust, to develop a solution to the economic problems that the poisoning had created, and also to deal with their drinking water issues. Unfortunately, we had to go back and kill the fish again in 1999, and you may have read about that in the newspaper, but we were prepared at that time to work together to make that happen. And so, in the end, I think it worked out very well, and the state came out smelling pretty good, I think you would say. And so that would be my, at least my reflection on what I feel that I did to improve the situation in working with a very poor community that needed a lot of help.
My experiences, if you've read my resume, are typically more in the corporate or business world. And so I can describe actually one of the last things I worked at Apple, and I can't give details, obviously, because it's a pretty secretive organization, but I worked on the performance team, and we were responsible for the performance of the whole operating system, at least the desktop, OS X. And I figured out a way that the system as a whole could better diagnose some really, really hard problems we were having to deal with. And up until that point, no one really knew how to get a handle of them. And so I formed a group of 4 different technology divisions to come up with a solution for it. And these are all divisions that have their own agendas, their own schedules. So I had to come up with a plan that they all could buy into, that could understand, and that management would agree with as well. And so I analyzed the problem and created a pretty specific document about what the problem was and how to solve it. I then came up with some specific solution documents, went to the individual groups, both the engineers and the managers, and spent 3 or 4 months really working the personalities, working the technical details, and convincing everyone that it was the right thing to do. And in the end, they all bought into it. It worked out really well, and it was the last thing, actually one of the last things I did at Apple, and I was very proud of it. And unfortunately, I can't tell anything about it, but it was an interesting group being the performance team, because we didn't have any direct authority over anybody. So every accomplishment was to do with personal relationships, of convincing someone that what you wanted to do was right and it was a good idea. So it took a lot of basically soft persuasion to make it happen.
Yes, I have 2 examples that I wish to share with the group, both ironically dealing with Vanessa. I was at a private meeting at a house. I was invited as a longer-term resident of Kensington, and having been involved in some of the committees. and I was there as well as Chief Hart, and both of our goals were to describe what the community was like to these new residents. One of the residents asked the former chief about the incident with Vanessa in the car, and he made some very inappropriate comments. I felt it was important that those comments be shared with the public, so I helped to set up an interview with the Contra Costa Times to make sure that our public knew those things that were said. The second example has to do with our paper, The Outlook. As you may remember, there was a long interview with Vanessa, and we on the Kensington Community Council, responsible for the paper, received many emails about that. Many people were in favor of the format, many people were against the format, and I suggested to the group that from this point forward, we no longer do interviews, that information like that should come in as a letter to the editor. Everyone on the board agreed with that, and we moved forward.
All right, thank you. So now we'll begin, yes, with Dave. Do you support investigating costs to provide police services through contracting with a nearby agency?
Yes, I do support investigating the option of contracting out. As part of the ad hoc committee, we looked into that situation in rather significant detail. And I first should say that I do recognize that there are strong opinions on both sides of the issue here in the community. But the ad hoc committee did a good job of listing the pros and cons, and also some of the things that need to be considered when contracting out. And I think it's a good starting point to start investigating what we want from contracting. We need to reach out to the community to get input as to what they want for police services, because there are different models of police servicing. The sheriff has a model, the neighboring agencies have a model, and so we have to understand what they would potentially all provide and what the community wants. We also need to get some real hard data as to what the cost would be and what the long-term commitments would be. And then you have to develop a request for proposals and set up a process for evaluating those proposals, which includes the community inputting into that evaluation. So yes, I do agree that we should look at it. It's not going to be a quick project. It needs a lot of background work, as I said.
Yes, I definitely, well, as you probably can tell, I support exploring the contracting out. I think, again, the ad hoc committee, subcommittee looked into it. That was the big takeaway, is that they could only go so far without a semi or official request from the board to the individual agencies. They could look at what communities that do contract out, their experiences and what it costs, but for us to know what it would cost us and what the structure would be, we really need to create essentially an RFP. Everything else is just going to be dancing around the issue. And I think certainly we need to try to understand what the community wants. Now, what the community wants, it's probably everybody knows, not everybody agrees on what we want. We did do a survey that I think Simon actually was in charge of, right? And while it wasn't completely scientific and there was not many controls, if you look at the results, it's pretty clear what kind of services the community values and what they don't value. So I think that's been somewhat answered. I think you could also have an RFP process where you had open committee meetings and everyone could come and give their input. So that would also help out discovering what the community wants. But I think you need to go to the next step and really create probably an RFP so you can get concrete bids, concrete proposals from agencies, because until then we really just don't know what we're talking about. And I honestly I can't say that I'm absolutely for contracting, because I don't know what that means. I don't know what agency it would be, what the price would be, what the terms. just as I don't think it's right to say I'm completely against contracting, because we don't know what the terms would be as well. So I'm absolutely for it.
I'm in total agreement with everything that's been said. I think we should look at this. I think we should ask, the board should ask the ad hoc committee to continue their investigation and come up with more hard facts so that we can better understand the costs involved and some of the other issues. But I definitely believe we should move forward and look at it. What I think of is how well the contracting out of the fire services has worked. That department has won numerous awards for the quality of their work. Is it inexpensive? No, but the point is they're doing a great job, and we do need to look at the costs, but we need to have a group, and I recommend, again, the ad hoc committee format, to investigate exactly what those costs would be so we could make a better judgment on the best way to go.
In my experience on the board of a preschool in Berkeley, we ran focus groups, went to community houses and established kind of criteria, objective criteria for what people view as quality. Cost is very obvious and clear, but what's really not obvious and clear is the quality we get. Having my teenage daughter have to call the police when her friend was unresponsive in the park here was a very hard thing for a high schooler to do, and Kensington did a bang-up job. They did a really good job. So those kinds of quality things of having teenagers feel safe and not leave a little girl to die in the park because she had drank too much alcohol and was toxic. That's really, really important quality that you can't measure. I've worked for large corporations and I've done multi-factor comparative models for vendor selection. What does this mean? This means a model with over 60 different criteria to establish a fair and objective way to make a decision so that it's not just based solely on cost. Because every day cost will mean something, but in the end, it won't give you the safety that you feel when you go to bed at night. And right now, I've seen them perform quite well. Now, granted, there has been some slip-ups, and we lack some legal protection that we need today to make us a better community. But I definitely think we have to be super careful, because as a little girl in Santa Barbara, seeing my grandmother have a heart attack on the driveway, and knowing that there was a policeman that was driving through that community every day, twice a day, looking at every single house, knowing who's homebound and will pull them out if there's a fire or an earthquake. Those are priceless qualities you cannot easily measure with an Excel spreadsheet. So I would really venture to say we have to be extremely careful not to take the corporate route and have crime go up in this community.
Thank you. All right, now we'll begin with Chris. How do you think the district could improve how it communicates with and engages residents?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think actually that the district does a pretty good job of communicating. The meetings are pretty open. I was really happy that the public comments didn't get moved to the end. I thought that would have discouraged and probably cut down on participation, so I think that's a good thing. You could probably have a little better website that might improve things a bit, although that's not really communication, but I think a better structured website that's a little easier to read and get information would help. I have found that it's a little frustrating, and I've been in the situation where there's an opening part of the meeting where you can talk about anything, but because of Brown Act and other restrictions, the board can't react, and I think it would be nice if there would be some way to get more one-on-one communication with board members, just to get to know people. My experience is that if you see somebody on the board and you don't know them, you can have an assumption about who they are and what they're like, but once you get to know people, I think you understand them better. So possibly more public meetings where you can have an open and free-flowing dialogue with the members of the public. So that's my ideas.
I think the most important thing is to continue the positive and open tone that this board has set for meetings. I think we should as well do something about our website and the agendas. And once again, I think putting together an ad hoc committee to look at ways of improving the website. I know there have been times when I've tried to search something and I can't find it. And luckily Lynn is there at work to help me find those missing documents. But I think we should have a website that allows for robust searching. And I also would like to see the agendas be in a more user-friendly manner. And I think, once again, this is something that an ad hoc committee could investigate and make recommendations, because they would be able to involve the community and get their feedback and process that information.
I think we're already on the right track, because we have 2 members have Hilltop kids on the board, and that was the pivotal point of my campaign before we had any parents on the board. So in a way, as much as they're doing all the horribly hard work, I was able to walk the whole community and give a flyer and say, hey, we need more parents involved, so we can involve some Hilltop people. Where are they? They're working 11 hours a day. They're outside. They're in the city fighting for their jobs. I've been there. It is not fun, and it is not easy. How to engage them? Electronically. I actually stood up an Amazon Web Services. It's kind of like the one that brings you the package, but it's the other half of their monopolistic business. And I stood up a site within 1 hour for my Orinda horse pasture community. And I know all about lucid search, and I know about context change and how to index things. I know that all sounds a little bit like gibberish, but when you get an email with the agenda as a PDF attachment, that prevents you from knowing how or getting in the habit to navigate to the actual link and pull the agenda. So those agendas should go out as a link, and you have a remember me password, or you put it in a safe place, what have you. Click, you go in there, you see the agenda. There's no reason it has to be attached, and it would then engage you better. And then the other thing I would do, it's called office hours. When I was a student at Berkeley, I could go see my professors several times a week. I once had a professor who thought I could take corporate finance without accounting, and I said, what's after-tax cash flow? Oh, I need accounting. So I took that after I almost failed that class. I went to a lot of those office hours. So if I'm appointed to the board, I'm going to have an office hour, you betcha, at a cafe several times a week. On a given time, people know when to find me. I already have someone reach out on Facebook. Someone had a complaint about Officer Hall, thought that was a little, so they complained and told me their side, and I certainly want to talk to Officer Hall too. But those are all the ways I'd engage.
So I think communication and community involvement has always been a challenge, as you can attest by the attendance at these meetings on an ongoing basis. So I think there needs to be multiple approaches to try to reach the community. We could do it in the old style, using the Outlook, for example, by having quarterly pieces by board members to provide information on issues in the community. We could also have maybe an annual mailing. The fire board does a mailing, and I think it serves them very well. It provides a lot of information to people. I think residents enjoy it, and they get a lot out of it. So that's one method, and that's an old-style method, obviously. A lot of people, as been indicated here, use online methods to obtain information. I understand there's going to be an upgrade of our website, and we should take advantage of that and putting more information up. Certainly maybe even summaries of the committee meetings that we have, like the Parks Committee and Solid Waste Committee, et cetera. We also have a Facebook page. Not many people maybe realize that, but it's mostly dominated by police information. I think the district could expand upon that, either having a separate Facebook page that is devoted to district information along with a police Facebook page as well. You'll see that in a lot of communities, Berkeley being one of them, albeit it is a larger community, but Facebook pages are not difficult to start up, nor are they not difficult to maintain. And so there are a variety of approaches that we can take, both old and new. Thank you.
All right, now we're going to give you, shall we, okay, we're going to have the public present their comments regarding, should we have the candidates close first? Let's have the, Yes, excuse me. We're going to have the candidates give their closing statements now, and then we'll excuse you to the audience so that you don't have to have public comments over your shoulders. So we'll begin here with, on the right, with Chris, and move that way as we begin on the, I'm sorry, on the left. I'm on the left and move to the right. Sorry, yeah, directionally challenged here for a moment. Okay.
Sorry, I just want to be clear. I thought we had agendized this to have the public speak and then the candidates close, no?
We had, but I think that it will perhaps work better for process to have them give their closing statements, and then we'll excuse them to the audience, and then we'll take public comment. Do you feel that they should? Yeah. Okay.
So thank you for coming, and thank you to the board for giving me the opportunity to apply. I guess in summary, I want to stress that I consider myself a progressive in that I like to look at problems from a number of different angles and try to discover all the possible solutions. And I think the contracting for services is just one possible solution for our police department. I think it should be looked into. But I don't want to give the impression that I'm locked into one solution for that. In general, I think we need to really step back and look at all the possibilities, and then once you've got the data, analyze whether it's a good idea or not. I do think that while I've said I support the idea of investigating it, it's pretty clear from the election results that the community does want us to move forward with that. So I think it's important to respect the will of the voters, that we do proceed with looking into contracting out. And with all the other problems on the board, again, I've spent most of my career working with clients, looking at their problems, coming up with solutions, and it's never been theoretical. Because I was providing the solutions, I was always directly responsible for the success or the failure of those. So I take ideas very seriously, knowing that I'm going to be responsible for the end result.
Well, thank you again for everyone for coming, and thank you for the board for considering my candidacy for the vacant position. I've already reiterated why I think I'm well qualified for the position, both from a standpoint of skills and experience, and the ability to work with others in group settings, working with people who have different opinions and different policy positions. I don't envy the board in having to make this decision, but I think it's important that we recognize once that decision is made, that we all coalesce around the board, work cooperatively with the board. We've had too much loud rhetoric coming from the online space, shall we say, and others, that I think needs to be toned down. I think we need to recognize that moving forward is the best way. People are going to have different opinions, and they're going to present them, but they can do that in a very concise and clear but respectful way. And I think that it would behoove us all to move forward in a very collegial way, working with the board, presenting our opinions to the board, and respecting their final decisions on issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk with you tonight about hopefully being appointed to the board. I've really enjoyed being a part of this community, having served on the KMAC Municipal Advisory Committee, working with Marty Wesby, getting the KCC, the KSEP registration online. So I'm always looking at every opportunity to get the community engaged at all levels, and for fairness and equality, having people be able to get to the meetings, whether it be watching a video recording after the fact, after they've put their children to bed and read them stories, or coming to the meetings. It's also been quite lovely not having the gavel not once be banged today. So that's definitely a great thing. I remember when I was campaigning in 2012, and I told one of the candidates that in my college experience, we passed a candle when we wanted to speak, and certainly it seems like we're more on the candle passing. I was told that was a bad idea, but I'm really glad that we're quietly enjoying our community because it's a very rich one. And my experience on a civic level, as well as my information technology experience and ability to get things done and understand, would put the community at a good position to have that diversity on the board and understand how to go forward. And it's really lovely to see a man out of uniform as our general manager, as I requested in my campaign that the police chief actually not have his uniform on half the time. They thought that was a silly idea, having a mother who was terrified of police, having grown up in Paris during the war. So I'm really glad that our community is starting to be more inclusive and warm and welcoming to everyone, and certainly happy to be a part of that and do my contribution.
In closing, I wish to confirm my belief that a KPPCSD director's role is to lead by example with respect and civility, and to work to engage our entire community in order to better understand their needs, and then to deliver services within a budget that will meet or exceed our expectations. Part of my business experience as Director of Marketing and Business Development was to manage customer relationships. I was responsible for speaking with unhappy customers. The goal was to resolve their issues, to make a better product. And we did. Not only did we have more happy customers, we sold more stuff. Once again, I want to thank the board for having this meeting, and especially thank all of you for being interested in the future of Kensington. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. First, I want to thank all of these applicants for being willing to serve, for their continued involvement in local government, and the attention that they have all put into understanding the issues. So before we excuse them, I'd like to give them all a round of applause. Thank you. So I'm going to invite, if you would like to, because of where our podium sits, and then we will now make time for public comment. Yeah. Yes, thank you. If you are watching the video and you see us all shaking up here, it's not out of fear, it's out of the chill. It's quite cold. So in random order, I'm going to ask that you speak in this order. Celia Conkis, Andrew Kaplan, Dakota McKenzie.
Better not get too far ahead, they'll forget.
Okay, we'll begin with those. Those are the first three. Celia Conkis, yes. And if you would each limit your comments to approximately 1 minute, that would be. 1 minute? Do we have, I think, or do we have time for two? How many are there? We've got. Do we? 3? All right, then we have time for two. And so there will be a 15-second warning, just so that we give everybody a turn to speak. Thank you. Sorry. 2 minutes.
2 minutes?
Yes.
I'm here to speak on behalf of Chris Deppy to fill the vacancy on the board. The results of the election of 2016 delivered a clear mandate for change. Directors Natoli and Hassai each won a seat on the board by significantly more votes than any other candidate who ran. It's my hope now that the board will be responsive to the mandate that was delivered in the November election in Kensington. You have been charged with looking into whether there might be a better way to deliver police services to Kensington. We have a seriously troubled police department, and we need to fix it. You have already taken the first step in this process by separating the GM and the COP. Thank you for your courageous action in doing so and for engaging General Manager Constantouris. Now it is time for the next step, a step that requires you to investigate the practical and financial considerations of contracting our police services. Your task will be easier if you have an ally who will contribute to your efforts to promote change and who will not undermine the investigations you are charged with doing. You will need an ally who is open to taking a fresh look at how to deliver better police services to Kensington and how to fix what's wrong with what we have. I hope you will appoint Chris Deppe to join you on the board. I attended nearly every meeting of this committee, this board, and the ad hoc committee, and witnessed firsthand that Chris was a strong, open mind and independent voice on the committee. He is clearly, in my opinion, the best choice for the job. I urge you to appoint Chris Deppe to the board.
Hi, I'm Andrea Kaplan. Yeah, that's fine. I just wanted to say briefly that I have been Chris Deppe's neighbor for 20 years, I guess. And as you can imagine, over that period of time, you know, trees have fallen down, fences have fallen over. So I've done some problem solving with Chris. And the thing that is most notable about Chris Deppe is that he is calm, logical, intelligent, and he has a great way of thinking about problems and not walking away with one side or the other feeling bad. But he is able to find solutions that may not make everyone ecstatic, but solutions that people can live with. And I think I'm very impressed by how everyone, all the candidates spoke, and there is a new environment, a new dynamic on the board, which I think is great. I haven't been here for several years, and I didn't hear anybody sound like they were going to call someone a name, which is a great breakthrough. And I think that I have seen Chris. I think Chris would make an excellent contribution to that great environment that's developing on the board. So thank you very much.
No, Ms. McKenzie, you're...
Hi, I'm Dakota McKenzie, and I'm here today for two reasons. One is to strongly urge the appointment of Doug Spath to the board. I came with that intention, and after hearing him, I have that intention even more strongly. And that is because, although many people said good things, and people are nice and people are well-intentioned, I believe that this is a crucial issue for our community, and that we need someone who is the most professionally qualified candidate for this job. I'm also here, you know, it was really amazing for me to realize that I have more seniority in this town than many people who've spoken tonight, although you probably think I'm younger than I am. But my family moved here in the mid-'70s, and I went to Kensington Hilltop. I moved back 10 years ago, fleeing gang warfare in Oakland. I was the manager of a nice apartment building in downtown Oakland for 15 years. And right before Whole Foods was built, or in the process of when they were in the process of building it, we got to witness what gangs can do in a nice neighborhood in a very short period of time. And I say this not to instill fear in people, but to let you know that community support, which I see in this community focusing around our police services. I am not in favor of contracting out, but I am in favor of a neutral examination of that issue. But I've seen what can happen when there isn't a sense of community and when there aren't police who respond. what I experienced in Oakland were some police responded and some police didn't, and it was the luck of the draw. I waited 45 minutes for a 911 call at one point, and I was just very lucky. So this is a really serious issue. I also want to say that what we have here is actually a town, and then that's very special. And that all of you who showed up here tonight are taking a stand for what you believe in.
2 minutes.
Does that mean that's 2 minutes now, or is the warning? Okay, well, take a stand, because if you don't, you're taking a stand by default. Thank you.
Thank you. The next three, and these are in random order, please, I'm not looking at, Pat Gillette, Lisa Corona, and Doug and Hoda Perry. Oh, have they? All right. If the Perrys have left, well,
So I've lived here for 38 years, I think. Is that right? 38 years. And I think the board has an opportunity here. You have an opportunity to fill an opening on the board with someone who's prepared, experienced, has the right temperament, and who's supported by a large number of people in the community. This board has set a goal of eliminating polarization and divisiveness in the community, and obviously many people in the audience feel that you've been successful thus far at doing it. So this is your chance, in my opinion. This is your chance to show that you really are going to do something that is critical to our community at this critical juncture. And that is that you're going to put Kensington first. And if you put Kensington first, I think when you look at those 4 categories that I just named off, preparedness, well, I value and admire all the people who stood up here and offered to run for this board. To take a seat on this board. I feel there's only one person who actually is prepared, and that's Dave Spath. The reason for that is that Dave has been at every meeting of the KPPCSD for at least the last 9 years. He comes to every finance committee meeting. He knows the issues that are before this board, and he can step in immediately and take on those responsibilities. There will be no ramp-up time, no learning curve. He's experienced, as you heard him talk. He has the experience in the public sector of working with large agencies, with budgets, with managing people, with managing projects, with making sure that things get done. He has the temperament, which he evidenced tonight. For those of you who read next door, you know that there are some people who've talked about the temperament of other candidates. I have no idea whether that's true or not, but he has evidenced that temperament, in my opinion, by, after not succeeding in the election the last time, coming to the next meeting and contributing the same way he contributed before. He's evidenced that temperament by his behavior on the ad hoc committee, where he was praised by everyone. And he has the support of the community. Almost 1,100 people in this community voted for Dave Spath. He came in third. We have 35 people that I know of who have written letters in support of him, who took time out of their days to write to this board. So I ask you to choose Kensington by choosing Dave.
Hello, Lisa Corona. I am also speaking this evening on behalf of selecting David Spath. I've had the opportunity to work with Dave, who chaired the ad hoc committee. I was on that committee, the one that looked at governance and operation structure, that met for over a year, had multiple meetings. But even before that, I noticed there was a man who would occasionally get up and speak at the district meetings and who actually had an in-depth understanding, in my opinion, of how agencies worked and practical suggestions for moving forward on board initiatives. I referred to him as the guy in the green plaid shirt, because for some reason, he doesn't have it on now, but I was like, who's that guy in the green plaid shirt? Who is that guy? I was like trying to figure out after I saw him at a few meetings. So I want to share a bit of history on the selection of the chair for the 10-member ad hoc committee board. At the first meeting, the committee was required to select a chair, and due to a lack of really trust amongst the committee members, a lengthy discussion took place on a variety of options, including ideas of co-chairs, chairs who would rotate at every meeting or rotate at longer meetings, and finally, we settled on Dave as a temporary chair for the first 3 months. After 3 months, everybody had a greater understanding of what it meant to be the chair, including how much dedicated time and work it actually took to be the chair, what a thorough job Dave was doing, not only as chair of this 10-member committee, but also being a member of 2 of the subcommittees that he worked on. He kept everybody moving forward in the large group and the small group, and really how fairly and openly Dave treated all the committee members and all of the public in moving that process forward. And after 3 months, the decision was needed on who was going to be the chair, and it was unanimous. Dave Spath was going to be the permanent chair for the duration of the project. And this is a person who is open to listening and learning all he can on an issue before he comes to a decision, does the research, and knows how to interpret information on complex issues, especially issues related to agencies and rules that govern agencies and their interaction with their community. And he has shown extraordinary commitment and active participation in all forms of government and civic engagement in this community before,
2 minutes.
the ad hoc committee, and after. So I hope you will keep an open mind, and I hope you will select David Spath to work with you.
Thank you. The next 3 speakers, Douglas Perry, David Bergen, Barbara Steinberg. I hope that's right. Is that Mr. Perry? All right, he's no longer here. Then we'll have Mr. Bergen, Ms. Steinberg, and then Marilyn Stolen.
David Bergen. The only applicants I know personally are Christopher Depp, Simon Braffman, and David Spath. I think they are all capable people. I don't know Kim Zwick, but I'm sure she is as capable as the others. Of these applicants, I support Christopher Deppe. I know that he has an analytical mind and will put all of his abilities to figuring out how to deal with all the difficult issues facing the district. He served on the ad hoc committee, as we all know now, and understands the issues and knows the people involved. I know him and respect his integrity. We also need someone with his technical knowledge on the board. I support his appointment to the board. I also have a note here from Jim Watt, who was unable to make it, and hopefully I can fit it in. I believe all 4 candidates possess skills that would be beneficial to the board. However, skills alone are not what is called for if the candidates are not focused on the most important issues facing the district, which I believe are to provide the best professional police services at the lowest cost. The emphasis on low cost is important because the costs of our police services have been rising at an alarming clip. The CalPERS valuation contained in this month's agenda indicates our unfunded PERS pension liability increased by $800,000 last year to a total liability of $3.8 million. When our medical liability is included, our total unfunded liability for police services stands at $6.9 million. At the same time that costs have been rising, we have been left short-handed due to the unavailability of officers because of workers' comp and administrative issues and what appears to be ongoing internal strife within the department. These rising costs and diminished services have to be addressed. One avenue to explore would be outsourcing, and to do so dispassionately and expeditiously. At the same time, we need to be evaluating our staffing levels, our hiring practices, and the areas where we want our police to focus their attention. Finally, we need to take a hard look at our salary and benefits and rectify those factors that are contributing to the staggering increase in our unfunded liabilities. I wish I could hear what, if anything, these
2 minutes.
have to say about these issues. but unfortunately, Jim cannot be here tonight. Thank you very much.
Barbara Steinberg, can you hear me? I've written all of you emails, but I decided that public comment is very important with the kind of issue of electing a board member. I've been very impressed with David Spath, and I urge you to appoint him as a part of the board. I think it will benefit our entire community. As we've heard tonight from our very elegant speakers so far, he's had extensive professional experience in the public sector, but we also know him locally, as you heard great detail, and he was elected unanimously to be chairman of the ad hoc committee. And as part of his leadership, a very important part of his leadership, he was able to work with people with diverse opinions, which is a terribly important part of this community. So I'm, again, urging you, he will be a benefit to all of us if you add him to the board.
Marilyn Stolen. Historically, we've come a long way to get to this point where effective governance is within reach. We have endured over 15 years of dysfunction on many levels, including dysfunctional police boards, police mismanagement, past abuse of power by law enforcement personnel, evidenced by the intimidation of residents, administrative staff, and 3 former board members. Add to this numerous investigations into police misconduct and our ongoing related legal costs. This resulted in a resounding vote for a change in the recent election, and a new majority board was elected by a high turnout of well-informed residents, building on board members Rochelle and Vanessa's reform efforts. This vote of 90% of the registered voters gave a clear mandate to the new board to split the GMCOP, to explore contracting for police services, and to stabilize our finances. As a result of the new board's efforts, we have taken the first step forward by splitting the GMCOP. Chris Deppe supports and has advocated for the voters' mandate and is well qualified to serve on the board. I therefore encourage the board to vote for Chris, to vote for positive change, and to put Kensington on the right track to responsible governance. Thank you.
The next 3 speakers are Katya Deniergaard, Ciara Wood, and Andrew Gutierrez.
I'm still Katya Deniergaard. I was sort of amazed looking at all the letters on the back table that they all seem to be in favor of David Spath's candidacy. And I'm really hearing a big cry for David coming up. I wanted to speak, we've heard a lot of really good ideas from people and good intentions, and I wanted to speak to the value of relationship building and building community, and particularly to kindness, forthrightness, and truthfulness. And I wanted to say that my personal experience with both David Spath and Simon Brafman is that they have those qualities of kindness and directness very consistently. I'm sorry, would you mind just, you probably have enough now. Good, thank you. And so these qualities seem like the most important qualities to build our community and heal the narratives of divisiveness that have been in the past. And I particularly appreciate both of them for being team builders who work well as a team, work well as a group, and also that they have the time to serve. I'm the most impressed with David's resume, but I'd be happy if either of them became the new board member tonight. And lastly, I guess I wanted to remind that this is only going to last for like 15 months, and then there's going to be an election. And 3 seats will be up for grabs at that time. So I think the board has an extraordinary opportunity tonight to go past previous narratives of diversity or conflict and affirm Kensington is one community again. And I think that'll matter a lot in the election, what you decide tonight.
2 minutes.
Do you mean 15 seconds? That's what the sign says. Or 2 minutes, I'm just curious. Okay. So, 15 seconds. Yeah, so I'm urging us to move past the past and select a very popular and highly qualified candidate, David Spath, as the next new board member. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Ciara Wood. For many, many years, I've been a stalwart opponent of contracting out police services. But my point of view has shifted sufficiently that I think we owe it to the community to consider a wide range of potential benefits that might result. This is not just about money as far as I'm concerned, but more and more about our ability to manage our department. This is all a lot more complex than it was when I was on the board. And now as you choose a new director to fill the board vacancy, I'd like you to choose someone who can deal with the many complex issues that beset the community and the services district. To this end, I recommend Chris Deppe to you. Chris is calm, intelligent, thoughtful, fair, well-spoken, and interested in the good of the whole community. Most especially important to me is that I feel Chris will work quietly, calmly, and diligently to investigate the potential financial benefits of contracting for police employee services. This kind of investigation does not make Chris, or frankly, any other candidate for this position, an outsourcing proponent, which was the kind of language that was used on the electric media. Rather, like a scientist, he will investigate and evaluate the possibilities and financial ramifications associated with contracting for services. The competing hypotheses that contracting for services would benefit
15
or
seconds.
do the opposite must be studied and weighed, after which the community and the board will be in a much better position to discuss the options before us. I recommend Chris Deppe to fill the vacant seat on this board. Thank you.
My name's Andrew Gutierrez. At the university, anytime we wanted to do something that we really had no intention of really getting done, is we would appoint a lot of ad hoc committees. It'd take an awful lot of time, they discuss everything, and nothing ever gets done. It's taken at least 20 years and hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal costs to appreciate the obvious fact that there was an inherent conflict of interest in a combined general manager, chief of police position. And the question is why? The current board has been sidetracked resolving inherited, ongoing police department issues. The pending appointment to the KPPCSD board is absolutely critical. And the last election was the voice of Kensington's silent majority. 91% of the voters cast votes. There was a 2-to-1 margin for the platform of Eileen Natoli and Sylvia Hassai. They soundly rejected the platforms of their two opponents. They're clear. They want to have exploration of contracting and other potential services of our police department, both for the level of service, the cost,
15 seconds.
fiscal sustainability. And it is for this reason that I urge the board to select Chris Deppe to be the next appointment. Thank you.
Thank you. The final four speakers, Kevin Padian, Linda Lipscomb, Rick Artis, and Dr. Lossie.
I'm Kevin Padian. Thank you. I'll be brief for an academic. There's a disturbing trend in this country that maintains we don't need expertise in government. Anyone with sympathetic views and a promise to serve will do. One look at our current dysfunctional national government should dispel this notion, even at the local level. You need the best expertise you can get. Anything less is a disservice to the community. Right now, we have several huge problems in front of us. They require experience in dealing with practical evidence, knowledge of laws and regulations. We have to address whether to keep our police force or merge with another, how to deal with both this building and the public safety building, which face enormous costs, and alarmingly, we are woefully unprepared to address a major conflagration such as an earthquake or fire will bring. David Spath is the only candidate who has the experience to help you with these problems. Or good people are applying for this position. 3 have served on at least one district committee. David Spath chaired last year's ad hoc committee, which required coordinating 3 subcommittees and many people with different ideas and skills. Under his leadership, the committee produced valuable evidence and information with no charges of partisanship or a particular agenda. David's been a constant presence at board and committee meetings, far more than all other candidates. You know you can work with him and that he will bring expertise and hard work to the table. The contrast among the candidates in government experience could not be plainer. David has 40 years of experience at the local, state, and national level. He's organized and supervised statewide programs, agency branches and divisions, and personnel committees. He's chaired national panels for the EPA and the National Research Council. He directed an agency with 300 people and a budget of over $20 million. What more could you want? If you were to take these candidate statements and qualifications and put them in front of the citizens of any town in this country, there is no doubt who would be chosen for this position.
15
Not
seconds.
to choose David Spath would raise serious questions. The other reason to support David Spath is that he is boring. No drama about this guy. He is low maintenance, no drama, does not call attention to himself, and you know you can work with him. This is the best and responsible choice, evidence-based government. You understand that, and that's what we need right now. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. That's a tough act to follow, Kevin. That was very good. You will all recognize me as Linda Lipscomb, who has been forever in favor of contracting out. I actually wrote out a little speech tonight, but there's no point. David Spath's background and his qualifications far exceed anything I could extol about them. You will note that I am a person who has solidly and unwaveringly been against contracting out for police services. And that is the reason that you should elect David Spath, because he is not committed to a position. He will go on the evidence. He will find out whether or not it is the best way to deliver services. No matter how much I have hammered on him to try to get him to have a firm commitment that he won't contract out, David says he will go on what is in the best interests of this citizenry, what makes the best fiscal sense, and what the citizens of Kensington want. So that's the reason you should select him. It's already clear he has the best qualifications. And what more can I say? I'll let it go at that.
This was 3 minutes and 45 seconds, so bear with me. I've been up since 4 in the morning. I'm going to be... This is 3 minutes and 45 seconds. I'll do it in 2, but I've been up since 4 a.m., so here we go. I would sleep really... This is Ricardus. I would sleep really well with most of the candidates who are in front of us tonight. And I would be overjoyed to have Dave. And I think actually you guys would be overjoyed to have Dave. I say this with all my heart. It would make your lives better. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. What I'm here to talk about is to say that, in my opinion, I have absolutely no reservations at saying that as the person on the committee who worked most closely with Chris, that he's not suitable for this position. I hope that the rumors that this is a fait accompli are incorrect. There are many reasons for my view, but first and foremost is that he approached our efforts on the committee in a biased, closed-minded, and disruptive fashion, starting with his insistence on throwing out the very charter that the community vetted and the board voted unanimously for. In case you wonder why it took us a long time to get going, now you know. As the person who headed up the consolidation subcommittee, I had to deal with a lot of things from Chris's point of view, and I won't summarize them. The most important thing I want to talk about is an event that occurred when Chris brought information out from LAFCO without the knowledge of the other members of the committee, took it to Janice Kosol of the Fire Board, and created a narrative about how the fire services contract was going to be canceled. Now, this went against what LAFCO came to us and said. This went against what the statute said. And Chris and Janice persisted in talking about this narrative all the way through to the end when the fire district's own attorney came to our last public meeting and completely debunked this entire line of reasoning. It was just a pointless waste of time. Now, some of you ran to get that kind of behavior out of Kensington politics. And I would really encourage you to think about it and do that. Get it out. Don't let that stuff in. Dave will not be that guy.
15 seconds.
Chris has supported contracting for years. He's been on the record. I have seen alternative facts be constructed to support a worldview before I even knew that was a thing any of us did. And I just don't think that this is the sort of candidate that we want if we're going to bring the community together and have integrity in our governance.
My name is Dr. Frank Lossie, and most of you have seen me at many of these meetings for these many decades. In fact, I first came to Kensington as a resident some 60-some years ago, and have participated in the various developments that we have been privy to over these 60 years, which is quite a lot of development, including the park, including the police force, including all sorts of things, and a lot of controversy, which has often become unwarrantedly heated. I have been very impressed with David Spath for various reasons, not only his outstanding experience level, but his even-tempered and friendly way of dealing with disagreement. I was very impressed with his leadership of the ad hoc committee, which was a huge, the two people here who don't have knowledge of it, was a huge committee of 100 or so people who participated in a broad assessment of the various things were needed in Kensington and the various conflicts of opinion that were represented here. And I didn't know this until tonight, but I'm not surprised to hear that after getting to know David Spath, the people who were working hard on this huge series of committees that were assembled as a so-called ad hoc total committee, unanimously selected him to be their permanent leader for the duration of that committee's functioning. That is an incredible kind of endorsement that I think we should all respect and admire as the outcome of a temporary leadership of the committee and an aspect of David Spath's capacity for bringing together viewpoints, diverse viewpoints and divergent viewpoints into a meaningful and very successful report that eventually came back to the board that created that ad hoc committee. So I am, without having had much personal contact with David Spath and without having been on that committee, am wholeheartedly in favor of the board's taking him on as the additional person that you need to help the group of you work together in behalf of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now close public comment and begin board comments. Would any board member like to speak initially? I'm happy to.
Yeah, I would, but, I think all the candidates appear to be very good. I was impressed by every single one. But I have to say, the one who's got the track record, if you want to see a track record of leadership, of modeling the kind of behavior people are asking for, being able to deal with disparate opinions and bring together solid consensus in that ad hoc committee, as we've heard referred to and as we experienced during the time that committee existed and the time it gave its reports. There's nobody who comes close to the solid, unequivocal demonstration of the leadership and the talent we need. There have been some references to the election and how, he came in third, but it was a distant third. It was still a significant third, and, I'd like to remind people that democracy is not about mob rule. I don't actually think there was a whole lot of difference between the campaign promises Dave made and those made by the two successful candidates, Sylvia and Eileen. But even if there were, it's nice to have full representation of the sentiment of the community, and the amount of votes he got tells us that there was solid support for him among a significant number of citizens of this community. So going on track record, going on professional experience and expertise, going on the need of this board for someone who's not going to be a guess, a speculative choice, but someone who knows what he's doing. We know he knows what he's doing. We know he knows how to get along with folks, how to deal with controversy, and how to turn that into consensus. There simply is no better choice than Dave, and I think this board owes it not only to Dave for the incredible amount of time he's invested over the years as an example to other members of the community, but also to the community itself. This is not about any of our personal beliefs in what should or should not happen, except perhaps that we should gather data and we should give our best decisions, the best decisions we can give based on the data we see. Other than that, it's not really about us, it's about the community. We have to remember that in every decision we make, and so that's what's motivating me to support Dave.
You may believe that the board began with consideration of the candidates in choosing how to cast their votes. And I believe actually that the opposite is true. I think that as a group, the board is looking forward and not back. Historical knowledge is very important, but that will not help us achieve our goals. So while we have not been able, unfortunately, to goal set together yet, I'm going to begin with I'm going to give you my vision and goals for the KPPCSD in the coming months and year. We vitally need a local government that has the routine and rigor of professionalism, which is something, unfortunately, that we still lack. A district that is financially viable and that we meet both our short and long-term goals, including capital improvements on our assets that add to our bottom line and forge community inclusion. We need a district with better and very clear policies and procedures for police officers, staff, the board, and community members. That is currently missing, unfortunately, in our day-to-day operations. We want a district that hires and retains exceptional employees, and a board that is communicating with all our community members, seeking out innovative ways to respond and reach Kensington residents, not just the wonderful folks who show up to our meetings, but those who, unfortunately, for whatever reason, are unable to make it. Using technology, snail mail, conversation, sandwich boards, whatever we can do to get the message across that you're welcome, that we appreciate your ideas. And so those are the factors that I will consider in making my vote this evening.
Once again, Kensington is fortunate to have several qualified candidates willing to devote their time and energy to serve Kensington. At this moment, we have some significant challenges. We've heard about them. The capital improvements needed for this building, the public safety building, improve the quality and professionality of our police services, and address our unfunded pension and retiree benefits. I've read the letters and resumes of the candidates, and I've read the letters of support as well, and there have been many. And I think each and every one of you who spoke tonight, as well as wrote letters in support of the candidate. The problems with our police department are apparent to most Kensington residents. The recent police scandals have tarnished Kensington and have been very costly and will continue to be costly to Kensington in high legal fees. These costs are not sustainable. We have a police union that's been politically active and was a major contributor to past directors who were the members that were negotiating with the police on their MOU. In the last 3 years, we've had one police chief that was fired, another who left prematurely, one that left after only a few days of looking at our problems. For the last several months, we've had 3 out of 10 of our officers off duty with no backup. When I've asked police chiefs what it means to have 20% of your police force out on medical leave, their consistent response was morale problems. We have one officer at night with no supervision, and that's not good police work, I've been told. The election in 2016 was the first election since the news of Reno was finally made public. The assumption that all was well in our little hamlet was shaken. During my campaign, I promised that if elected, I would work to split the combined GOP-CM positions and to break that inherent conflict of interest and hire a skilled GM. And I also promised to get the necessary facts so that we can explore whether contracting makes sense for Kensington. Makes sense both in terms of the police services and also finances. I've made my positions very clear. At this point, we don't have answers to these problems, but we must remain committed to first look at the options and make decisions. And while I'm somewhat torn, it is with this in mind that I am voting for Chris Steppe. He's a problem solver, and he has keen analytical skills that can help us with our financial challenges. He was an active member of the ad hoc committee, and he's contributed to the betterment of our community. Most importantly, he's been clear and consistent on the need to explore whether contracting for police services makes sense for Kensington. He's an insightful, dedicated resident of Kensington, and I appreciate his ability to serve. Thank you.
Sure, I'm going to go ahead, and unfortunately, you'll find that my statement is not going to be as coherent as I wish it could be, and my heart is beating more than my own when I was up here as a candidate, frankly, because for some in the community, this appointment has taken on a meaning that, I understand is extremely important to them, and have just, it's wrapped up with a lot of other issues. So I really want to urge people to just remember that things are what you give them, these narratives about whether we are together or not together, or divisive or not. The board can only do so much to solve those feelings and those problems. And I urge everyone in the audience to remember that you're writing the narrative too. I believe that our district is in a time of transition, and over the last several years, residents became aware of shortcomings in the district's leadership and management and have expressed a strong desire for change and to move Kensington forward. Sorry. It is our role, the board's role, to set the policy and provide oversight so that Kensingtonians are confident that we have law enforcement we can trust and a level of services, including community policing, of the quality we expect and deserve at a cost we can afford now and in the future. Those are I believe, the community values we hold in common. The qualities I'm looking for and value in making this appointment is someone who, while cognizant of the constraints that the district faces, has a bias toward action and will work creatively to overcome them to make progress towards a professional 21st century standard in all aspects of our management, operations, and services. There's a huge aspect of this task ahead of us that is change management. I think it's important that we have a board member who understands the importance of setting goals for our district and will work with our district leadership to provide the support for them. But it is not our role to manage on a day-to-day basis our staff. It is not our role to manage on a day-to-day basis the budget. Of course, it's our role to set the budget and provide strong oversight, but we do not have a day-to-day role. And I believe that we need a board member who will honor the community's desire for change. When looking back at the involvement of all the candidates over the last 9 years, 10 years, I'm looking for someone who was taking action while they were trying to solve problems. And I also read every single letter that came in. I'm sorry I was not able to respond to anybody to acknowledge the letters, but I read them all, and I want to thank everybody for writing. I think in the end, it's not the inputs that matter. It's not how many years we've lived in Kensington. It's not how many meetings we've attended. It's not how many hours we've devoted to district service. At the end, that matters to the residents of Kensington. What matters is the impact our decisions have on their day-to-day lives. Can they get a police report on identity theft in 2 weeks instead of 2 months? Is the community center reservation calendar up to date, and can they make a reservation easily? Are traffic control measures slowing cars on the Arlington? Can they find information on our website easily? I think it's important that at the end, there are very big issues, there are very small issues, but it's how we impact day-to-day lives that matter for people. I believe that looking back over the involvement of all the candidates, when something wasn't working, Chris Deppe stood up and worked with his neighbors and colleagues and addressed the board and addressed police chiefs and worked hard to make change. And this is probably the hardest decision I've had to make, but it's the decision I came to, not for me, because it would be a lot easier for me to make a different decision. There are candidates here who, when I knocked on their door and they saw I was running, were thrilled. There was somebody here who I sat and had coffee with and talked about Kensington's problems. There's somebody who I see here at least once a week at the meat counter at Young's who I admire and like very much. but what I'm looking for is not what's easiest for me, but what I think is best for the district going forward. And I really appreciate what all the candidates had to say and how they worked hard to, at the end of their statement, bring everybody together. And I urge all the residents to take heed of that message, because it doesn't matter who was going to be appointed, there was always going to be people who are disappointed. And I apologize to those who are disappointed in me. There are people who I admire, there are neighbors, there are friends, but I've made the best decision I can for the moment.
Before I make a motion, I just want to thank the applicants again. The richness of our applicant pool is stunning. It gives me great faith in Kensington. I hope it gives you great faith in your neighbors, the fact that they continue to show up, that you all show up even when it's hard, even when I know it incites emotion for all of us to be here. I echo Sylvia's comments in that this is very, very difficult. You're all well qualified. I thought a chart would help me. I went and made a chart. Who's committed? Who's been involved? Who cares? We have 3 members who served on the ad hoc. We have 3 members who've run before. We have 3 folks who are involved currently in committees. All have been involved in local issues. It's really fantastic. So please do not think that anyone's vote tonight is a mark on how we feel about you as our neighbors and involved, because I know everyone will be disappointed. I don't believe anything was decided tonight because in the process of the evening, I've changed how I think what I'm looking exactly for and solidified my vote. So, but I do know that this board must go forward and must work together with the community. So with that, we'll take the first vote. There may be multiples. I make a motion that we vote to appoint the vacancy, to fill the vacancy for Board of Director for the Kensington Police Protection and Community Services District.
I'll second.
All right, we'll take a roll call. Director Hassai?
Chris Deppe.
Director Welsh?
Dave Spath, and I want to make it clear I'm not voting against the other candidates. I'm voting against what I think is the wrong choice. And I'm voting for Dave because I think that's absolutely the right choice and the choice that is most devoid of political dynamics.
Thank you. Vice President Natoli?
I vote for Chris Deppe, but I will echo what both Director Hassai and Director Welsh have said. We are very lucky with having outstanding candidates. Thank you.
Rochelle Sherris-Watt, and I also vote for Chris Deppe for the vacancy of Director. So by a vote of 3-1, we appoint Chris Deppe to the role, but we thank everyone for attending. All right, our meeting still continues.
Hey, folks, we still have to finish the meeting, please.
Yeah, we're sorry if you need to leave. We understand. All right, we're going to move on to item 6, the consent calendar. All right, would anyone like any item from the consent calendar removed this evening?
Come on, folks, please take the conversation outside so we can finish our meeting.
All right. As nothing, I make a motion that we approve the consent calendar.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Aye. All right, we approve the consent calendar. The next meeting of the Board of Directors regular meeting is September 14th, 2017. The August 24th meeting has been canceled. I make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
I seconded it.
Aye. All right, the meeting is adjourned. We thank you so very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
I agree with just about what you said about David, except one thing.
Yes,
He's equivocal.
What?